So I would love if, firstly, could you just sort of introduce yourself and what the Answer Coalition is and what you're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Walter Smolarek. I'm an organizer with the Answer Coalition. That stands for Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. We're here getting ready, preparing signs and other materials for the August 12th demonstration against fascists, against white supremacists, against neo-Nazis who plan together at Lafayette Park in front of the White House. We'll also be at Lafayette Park, but we're going to be bringing the masses of people. We're going to be bringing thousands and thousands of people to show that the majority in this country rejects their message of white supremacy and hatred.
And so part of the word Answer Coalition is coalition. I would love if you could kind of talk about what sorts of people, what kinds of groups, ideologies are sort of represented by the coalition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the Answer Coalition was formed just a few days after the September 11th attacks in New York. It was a grouping of people who thought that, the Bush administration, and I think we were clearly proven correct by history, the Bush administration was taking advantage of this to launch an endless war drive and also a war on civil liberties in the United States. The ER and racism, of course, was a central part of that message because the mobilization for war, as it always is, or as it always is in a society like the United States, involves the spreading of horrific racism all across society to dehumanize the enemy. And so, in addition to our anti-war work, we take our anti-racist work extremely seriously.
Can you talk about that kind of intersection? How does white nationalism and foreign policy kind of touch each other?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that any time that there's a military attack of any sort against any people, the targeted people and the targeted government needs to be dehumanized. If the Bush administration or the Obama administration, for that matter, said you have to send your daughters and sons to die in Iraq or your sons and daughters to die in Libya so that our buddies in the big oil corporations and the big banks can make more profits, nobody would sign up, right? Nobody would accept that type of explanation or that rationale for war. And so they have to do a number of things. One is to dress it up in noble causes like promoting democracy and freedom. And the other side of that is to promote racism, to promote the idea that these people who are being targeted by the U.S. war machine are inherently dangerous. And so we think that the racism that happens internal in the United States, the intense anti-black, anti-immigrant racism that we've seen, of course, throughout U.S. history and certainly in the last several years, that's all part of the same complex, the same system.
And so how does Trump, I guess, fit into this? Because Trump would tell you that he doesn't endorse this. He's not going to be at the White House that day. I'm sure that he'll say that he condemns it and all of that. But it seems like you take a different approach. How do you see Trump intersecting with this?
Yeah, for sure. Well, of course, Donald Trump did not invent racism. Racism was there before Donald Trump was elected into office, far before. The roots are systemic and not just with one individual. But I think certainly Donald Trump is fanning the flames of racism in society from the very first day of his presidential campaign, where he said that Mexicans are criminals or rapists, all sorts of disgusting, allegations like that. It's been a core part of his politics, right? Mobilizing people on the basis of racism as opposed to, talking about, the true problems that people are facing. So I think that when Donald Trump said that there were very fine people on both sides in Charlottesville, it was a very clear, as clear as you could possibly be without going right out and saying it, that he effectively endorses the violence and the bigotry and the hate that the fascists were spewing that day. And so while of course there's a political firestorm, he pays very close attention to his approval ratings. I don't think that there's been a single thing that's changed about his core politics since that day.
And so there's kind of a variety of different tactics that people bring to oppose people like those who are attending Unite the Right. What does the Answer Coalition kind of plan to do? And then what are other activists doing, and how do they all kind of fit together?
Right, well, I can really only speak to what our plans are in the Answer Coalition, but we think that the most effective way to fight fascism is to bring out the masses of people, to bring out the huge numbers, the majority of people in this country who have progressive values, who reject racism, who reject fascism and the hatred and terrorism of the Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan. So we think that thousands and thousands of people will come to Lafayette Park and to the many other demonstrations that will be happening at and in the run-up to the quote-unquote Unite the Right to demonstration. So we're going to demonstrate just how tiny and isolated the fascists are.
Now, how would you respond to somebody who would say that the time has come for more direct confrontation as opposed to having a rally and showing up on others?
Well, I think that whatever happens to the Nazis is purely purely the result of their own aggression, purely the result of their own hateful rhetoric. What we plan on having is a disciplined demonstration, one that people can come to and make sure that they feel secure as a consequence, not of the actions of the police, which are in fact going to be serving as the private security of the Nazis and the Klansmen, but secure because of the well-organized nature, the preparations of our organizers, our own security team. So we think that people are going to really respond to that.
Can you actually elaborate on do you think that the police are going to protect the free speech rights of Answer?
Well, I think that they've shown historically that they're much more interested in protecting the free speech rights of the Ku Klux Klan, of neo-Nazis, white supremacists, people who are spewing this kind of hatred. We even saw the possibility that the Washington Metropolitan Transit Authority would be providing a special car for the Klansmen and the Nazis. So we are going to be very assertive about our right to free speech. We won't back down from that, and we don't anticipate any problems.
So the next thing I was going to ask you is, I have a lot of critics who tell me, why bother filming fringe fascists or white nationalists, etc. And I've heard the same question offered about activists. Why not just ignore them rather than incentivize them or draw attention by going? So what is the point of going out rather than just ignoring them away?
Sure. Well, we think that if we ignore them, they'll only grow. They'll only grow if we let this type of disgusting bigotry fester throughout society. Because we think that in a society as unjust, as unequal as the United States, this type of hatred it's actually organic to that type of society. You know what I mean? It's something that happens inevitably when there's a tiny group of people at the top who have all the wealth, all the power, and will do anything to maintain it. So we think that if we just ignore it, it will not go away. In fact, it will fester and grow, and it's very important from the very beginning that masses of progressive and anti-racist people come out and show that we're the majority and we're going to remain the majority because we won't allow their message to go unanswered.
I've also seen a whole lot of media, I think, misperception where the way that they describe generally anybody who is out there protesting from the left wing or against the Unite the Right type people, a lot of them are described by the media in a very different way than how they describe themselves. Can you talk to me about kind of media misperceptions? What do people not understand? What do you want people who might watch Fox News or CNN but are watching this, what do you want them to know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that there's no mistake can be made that these are Nazis, these are fascists, these are white supremacists. They prefer the label alt-right because maybe it sounds less scary to people because, the Klan, as a consequence of its over a century of terrorist actions, may be discredited. Maybe they have to adopt a new label. Maybe they have to call themselves alt-right rather than neo-Nazis or fascists or, whatever other label that they might adopt. But, we can't be fooled by that. I think that it's very, very clear what these people stand for. It's part of a long strain in U.S. history, the extreme right wing, the racist right, the bigoted right, because they have all sorts of prejudices and hatreds and bigotry. That's existed, and in certain periods it was of course the mainstream of U.S. politics. Now the politicians have learned to speak differently. They use a different type of rhetoric, but I think that the core of the racist character of U.S. society. I mean, just look at what any police department is doing in any major city. It remains there, and as long as that core remains there, this most extreme manifestation of it, which is like the people who might gather in Washington D.C. on August 12th, that's going to be part of the fabric of society as well. So it's very important that we stand up to them.
And is that limited to just Trump and the Republicans as far as mainstream politics go?
Yeah, of course not. Of course not. Almost every major city in this country is run by a Democratic Party machine, right? D.C. included. And I think that when you look at the most outrageous acts of police brutality and police killings, it's almost always in major cities run by Democratic Party machines. And so I think it's a much more systemic thing than the prejudices or bigotries of individual politicians or even the political party that they're a member of.
And so your I guess rivals out there are going to be promoting an ethnically homogenous society. They want a society that's very different from the one we have today in one direction. What would kind of the Answer Coalition's ideal society look like? What direction would you like to take?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can't play into their narrative of, they're the agents of change and we just want everything to stay the same. Of course, we don't want everything to stay the same in society. We think that there has to be radical changes in who holds power and who holds wealth. And we believe that, the struggle against white supremacy and racism is an integral part to this struggle for really a different type of society, one where people have the basic things that they need: healthcare, education, housing, have the right to live in dignity. They know that their family won't be deported, their family members won't be ripped away from each other, they won't be incarcerated for no reason by a racist police department or a racist court system. So we want fundamental radical change, but it couldn't be more different than the type of change that those fascists are talking about.
You know, I think for a lot of people what's going to happen in DC is just something they see through the TV or read about online. Maybe you can talk a bit more about the broader significance nationally of what's going to go down in this city this weekend.
Yeah, I think it'll absolutely have national significance, not least of which because it is Washington, D.C., because it's right in front of the White House. You know, the fascists are organizing across the country. You know, we saw what happened in Portland. Again, you know, the police acting as the personal security of the fascists. I mean, the neo-Nazis were actually cheering them on when they went ahead and attacked the anti-fascist protesters. And so I think that, especially on the East Coast, as a consequence of the huge mobilizations we saw, they were... you know, they felt their isolation. They had to retreat momentarily, but they're not defeated, and this is still very much an ongoing struggle, an ongoing battle in U.S. society. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, in every town and city where the fascists, where the Klansmen feel emboldened, feel bold enough to gather, I think that a similar type of mobilization needs to happen.
There can often be a misperception of the term anti-fascist, or Antifa has been, you know, used by the media in different ways. I would love if you could kind of explain what Antifa is, what Black Bloc is, what's the difference in terminology. Can you kind of clarify what the media maybe gets wrong and try to help people understand?
I'm very happy it brings up that question because there's a lot of terminology which is going to be flung around, which a lot of people might not be necessarily tuned into. So you just like give us a bit of a glossary, our viewers especially, about what's going to be said and what the kind of languages that you use.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the main error that the media makes is that, so Antifa, right, which is just short for anti-fascist, it's not an organization, right? It's not like you can be like a card-carrying member of Antifa. It can, you know, refer to a number of different things. I mean, some people who might self-identify as say, anarchists could, you know, also say, well, I'm, you know, a supporter of Antifa, meaning I am an opponent of fascism. You know, there are many people who are opponents of fascism who are not anarchists. I would say that the overwhelming majority of people in U.S. society would say I am an opponent of fascism. And I think that, you know, it's really shows the fundamental unity of what, you know, maybe could be called like the mainstream right wing and the extreme fascist right, that, you know, they've created this whole media phenomenon, this scare tactic that, oh, if you go to a demonstration, if you try to rally in the streets for progressive and left-wing values, it's just going to be a riot. It'll just be a melee because, you know, these scary Antifa people will be there. And that's nonsense. I mean, nothing like that will be happening. And we think that, you know, the demonization of anti-fascist, anti-racist protests is part of a move to actually give the open Klansmen and Nazis room to grow and room to breathe.
And to be clear, your organization is not necessarily anarchist, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, we're not.
How do you see them as far as, are they allies? Are they kind of strategic allies in a case like this? Are they rivals in a different way? How do they kind of fit into the equation for you?
Well, we want to have maximum unity with all people who are ready to take to the streets and stand up against racism. You know, that applies to truly any organization that we can have principled unity with. You know, on Sunday we're going to be having a discipline demonstration, one where there's a thought-out plan. There'll be, you know, I think a very well-executed security detail to make sure that everybody who's attending is safe and secure. And so that's the type of action that we'll be organizing.
So you've obtained a permit, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah, we have. Yeah. So it'll be permitted. We've, you know, have been very appreciative of all the donations, and of course we need more because we're going to be building a stage. We want to keep people there as long as possible, and we'll have representatives from many different organizations and groups from across the country coming and speaking, and we're gonna hold our ground.